today we have Linda Gilbert talking to us about fair cattle markets. Linda, can you give me a little bit of background on your involvement within the cattle industry and where you're located?
Sure. I'm Linda Gilbert, and I'm a cow-calf operator. I live in Buffalo, South Dakota, which is in the very northwest corner of South Dakota. We're 25 miles from North Dakota and 25 from Montana. I've been involved in ranching and cow-calf operations my entire life. I was born on a ranch, met my husband in college, moved here, and I've been involved in the beef industry for over 50 years.
What do you think are the biggest issues facing our industry?
You know, the biggest issues, in my opinion, are that we're not being fair to our consumers. We're not getting our products, which we work so hard in the United States to create a product, create a beef product to go out to consumers who want the high quality. And we meet so many tough regulations in order to do that. We're all very involved. Every rancher I know, and I know a great number of them, they're proud of their product and they want people to eat beef. And I believe we're doing a real injustice to our consumers by not having that product available and by not making sure that it's labeled that it is USA beef and that it was born, raised, and harvested in the United States. I think, of course, that's cool, and I've believed in cool for a long time. I believe in labeling for many products. And after all, a friend pointed out to me that beef is a commodity unless you identify it, and that's so true. Polaris doesn't advertise side-by-sides, they advertise Rangers. Why are we not advertising USA beef? And these are the consumers we should be taking care of. Having said that, I do believe in exports. I was a member of the Cattlemen's Beef Board for 6 years, and I've seen some phenomenal things that have happened with exports. But I believed when the act and the order was written, there was some misguided decisions that were made, and that was one of the main ones. We can identify USA beef when we export it, but tragically we can't do that here in the United States. And I think that we're making a real mistake importing beef, even if it's not a very large quantity, it's going to be cheaper. And obviously that cheaper meat is going to go, unfortunately, into our service industries. It's going to our schools. So we're not taking care of our own people, and I think COOL can do that.
Do you feel like checkoff dollars are serving our producers adequately?
I don't at this time. And I will qualify that by saying I think in the state of South Dakota, we do very well with our checkoff dollars. I'm very impressed with the South Dakota Beef Council and the projects they have going. They have really ramped the game up. And I'm no longer a member of the Cattlemen's Beef Board or the South Dakota Beef Council. Just qualify that before I say anything. I feel like as the numbers of cattle have gone down, and I've watched this checkoff for many, many, many years, it's tragic to me that we're not utilizing it to the best of our ability. There's been some interesting projects, and I was a part of the operating committee, and I was a part of the executive committee. Watching as we go, we're not using it in the way that it's possible to do the most good. We are using it well within the parameters of the act and the order, and that's what we have to do because that's how it's written. I just wish that we could focus more on actually, as we go forward and we look at products like fake meat and the stem cell research, we should be really using those checkoff dollars to address those issues, and we're not. We continue to see it go not necessarily to represent the independent producer. It's representing a product much more that could be more than it is. And one of my great disappointments is we're still using the phrase beef is what's for dinner. That's been used since the 80s. It's time to go on beyond. And I just feel like it could be more. I've never been very pleased to watch one organization, and it's a policy organization, have access to the funds, and they're very good about keeping the funds separate, and I've seen that. I just feel like it's a limiting factor, right, as much as the act and the order is. And I truly believe the Checkoff is ready for an overhaul. And like I said, I believe our South Dakota Beef Council does a phenomenal job, and part of it is because they are so close to the independent producers. They listen to the producers. We see things happening. But I think at the national level, we have gone well astray of what it could be. It's always frustrated me that back when they were getting over $100 million a year in Checkoff funds, that they were not refuting back then what the doctors were saying about beef. That's where the beef consumption started going all wrong, along with Tyson coming up with the chicken. But if we'd have refuted it, we had the money back then. There's not as much money. I mean, they're getting about $40 million a year, which is quite a bit, but it's still nothing like $100 million was. Yeah.
How do we reform our Checkoff to get it more in line with helping our independent producers? How do we go about implementing that change?
That's really a tough one because, once again, you have the act and the order, and it's in place. And I don't know the legalities of what that would take. There's been many efforts that have been taken, and there are powerful forces in our country that are not going to allow some things to happen. Mm-hmm. And tragically, the one that pays the price for that at the end of the day is always going to be the consumer, because we as independent producers we're paying the Checkoff. It's a fixed expense within all of our operations, and we should be seeing more results of that, and we're not. So I don't know how we change that. I don't know if you can get enough people to demand that, because that's been tried in many ways. I've watched many of the lawsuits that they've tried have not been effective. I think public opinion is very important, and it's tragic to me that the independent producer is not being listened to. But at the end of the day, the power is not with those of us that are starting the chain of this animal. The cow-calf producer starts the whole process. Yep. And we are not being listened to, but we don't have any power. The power is all at the end product, and it is with where it's being harvested and with the retailer.
So a little while ago, you made the statement that you stand behind the reinstatement of MCOOL.
Yes.
Where are we at with that process of getting MCOOL reinstated? Do you know?
I don't know, because until Congress convenes,
okay,
and until there are some actions that can be taken, I don't even know what the petition does.
Right.
I believe it has to be legislated. I think I'm hoping that all of our representatives and senators will listen to, because it looks to me like it's going to get to well over 300,000. That's a significant number of petition signers.
Right.
And I actually was very pleased to see how many consumers signed it. I think that's very good, because we need to work together with our consumers. We need to find out what they need. Yeah. And all of us that are here down on the ranch, you need to know where this animal's going and what's going to happen but we also need to get beyond the break-even point, and I think MCOOL proved that that can happen. Now, there were many other factors when we actually had some good years. My husband and I have been married 50 years now, and I told him, we're not dumb people. I don't understand why we're in a business where we've had 2 good years.
Right.
And our ranch is, we're the 4th generation. Our grandchildren are the 6th generation on it. And I don't see how we can continue if it's constantly, if the person that starts with the animal is kept at a break even, that's not a sustainable business model. And so MCOOL helped us differentiate the meat. It helped us, and I do believe the millennials, I believe a lot of the younger people are very much aware of where food is. And I actually have seen the study, and I know some of the background on the study. They constantly refer to that the consumers didn't care. You know, and I know that studies can be tilted any way you want them to be tilted. It's how you ask the question. It's what you do with it. It's who you ask the question. And so I believe if they put that out there again, I believe it will be very important if it's consumers that are asked and not just producers. It needs to be consumers that are asked about that. Or if they're going to do a study about the checkoff, this is something I advocated for when I was on the board, and I still advocate it. Why, if we're going to do a study, why don't you ask every single person that pays the checkoff for their opinion? That's a very easy process because every one of those people, all of our names are in those databases. Yeah. Why are we not asked that? Don't ask random people, ask the people that are paying into checkoff, and then ask the consumers about the product.
Right.
And where they believe if the source of it's important to them.
So there has been a lot of conversation about increasing competition within our cattle markets. How do you think we increase competition within our cattle markets?
I believe the only way it's going to work is hopefully more negotiated cash sales. I think it has to happen that way because if you're a contract grower already, if your feedlot is already a contract grower, if you are that person that is feeding that animal, which that's typically not myself, I'm the one that sold the calf, but that next level, they can't be at break even or losing everything either, you know. Mm-hmm. And once again, this comes down to it's the power of it if you're under contract. But if they negotiate some cash sales. Another thing I would really like to see, and I recognize the labor issue, and I recognize the fact that working in a packing plant is not the most desirable job. But it would seem to me that along with all the changes that need to be made, we need to advocate for training some people, and I don't know who that is, but I know FFA has a huge meats part of their organization and through the high schools. I'm saying that we need to recognize the fact that those people need to be taken care of in order to be in that occupation. It cannot be always minimal wages. We're not going to be able to keep those laborers down, or we're not going to be able to keep them in that business. And we have to have that. Robots cannot break the animal. Right. So we have to have a labor force that's being paid enough to do their job. I also would like to see way more smaller packing plants like the Aberdeen plant. I think those have the ability to do the niche marketing. And the local locker plants are wonderful, and I like seeing them talk about, they're opening a lot of those up. And I believe that's how you develop that person that really wants beef on their table, is a person that's bought a half of it. They're going to keep eating on that beef, and if it's a good experience, they're going to do that again. I don't see the numbers of that being enough to significantly change. As I look at people in LA and I look at people in urban areas of Chicago and New York, Washington, D.C., they're probably not going to go buy a freezer and buy a half a beef. But surprisingly enough, I was on the East Coast doing some speeches one time, and it was actually through Checkoff. I was sent there as part of that, and it was a very interesting experience. A fourth of our consumers are in that Northeast corridor. And when you talk to meat managers in grocery stores on the East Coast, they really know what they're doing, and they really know how to make a customer happy. And I'm not sure we even do that here in the Midwest. So, you know, there's so much out there that we could be doing to increase that. But I think if you could break down the stranglehold of these four packers, I believe you could service the whole country and still have the exporting ability.
If for some reason we don't get some solution implemented within our cattle industry to turn these cattle markets around and find fair cattle markets, where do you see the ranching industry going? Where do you see this cattle industry heading without significant change being implemented?
Well, I'm really afraid. There were a lot of young people that came back to ranches during those few good years because it looked like they would be able to support more than one family.
Yeah.
I think you're actually going to see a lot of, if people decide to stay on the ranch and do a cow-calf operation, I suspect a lot of us are going to end up being like the hog industry or be a contract grower where you're going to take we already do that. We take what we're offered, but at least you have multiple buyers, you know. Mm-hmm. I really worry about the livestock markets, the buildings themselves. I don't see, it seems like it's getting tougher and tougher. We tend to sell our calves at home, but you need sale barns for dry cows, and you need sale barns to establish markets. And if that's not allowed to establish, I think within 10 years you're going to see even fewer ranchers. You know, our numbers have gone down. I'm sure we're down under 700,000 now in the United States, and I suspect that it is even longer.
Right.
I think a lot of people will be raising cattle, living on land that they maybe don't even own the cattle. They're running the cattle, and they might own the land, but they may not own them. There's a lot of things I see happening because, like I said, breaking even is not a sustainable business model. You just cannot do that forever. And we've been held to break even in the cow-calf operation for many years.
Mm-hmm. So if you could sum it up in one sentence, what does the cattle industry need most right now?
I think the most important thing in the cattle industry right now would be to get cool labels on USA beef.
So with that, do you have any closing statements that you'd like to make?
By the very nature of being an independent cattle producer, you're not very good at joining together, but we need to do that. But I believe the best thing we can do is keep in contact with consumers. And I actually have liked the people that I've watched talking to the businesses that we work with. That's an important point, and we've not always been very good about that either.